Meghan Dwyer, thank you so much for joining us today. Meghan is a certified financial planner and the host of the Money Isn't Scary podcast, which I've been on, by the way. And after spending 15 years watching women take a passive role in the management of their money, Meghan went on a mission to help them stop playing small. By challenging societal norms around women and money, Meghan aims to empower women to make money decisions out of a sense of abundance and confidence rather than scarcity and fear. When Meghan isn't working, she loves running, writing, and being a mom to her 2 young boys. So Meghan, I don't want to save it until the end. Where are people going to find you after this interview is over?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. You guys can listen to my podcast, Money Isn't Scary, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And you can also check out my website, moneyisantscary.com. And I am out there on social media, typically more active on Facebook and Instagram, just at Money Isn't Scary.
I love it. Now, as you know, the Find Me the Money podcast is mostly for women. The Divorce Money Guide has been embraced by women. And so women are the audience to whom we market. And so what you talk about is near and dear to my heart. And the truth is that society sends a lot of messages about money to women. And those messages aren't really very good much of the time. Women aren't good with money. You know, the stay-at-home mom is lazy and sits on her butt at home when the truth is that she's raising the kids, which is a 24-hour-a-day job. This new meme that really has me going, girl math. Ooh. How do you feel about the girl math?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, could you do a quick favor for the audience, for those who don't maybe know about this, and just kind of give a quick high level of it? Because I think that would be important context. But yeah, then we can get into it.
Well, this whole girl math is really just, people are trying to be cute with their memes, and they're trying to, but it's reinforcing that women are bad with numbers, or that they are doing things to hide what they're doing with money so their husbands don't find out. And it's all, I think people don't have malicious intent with it. They think they're being funny and cute, but I think it's just such a reinforcement of a negative stereotype.
Yeah, thank you. And I 100% agree. I think that so much of our relationship with money, and I just look at this piece from the angle of money, but this all has to do, I think, with our relationship with ourselves, and that kind of gets projected into all these different areas of our lives, because how we do one thing is how we do everything, right? Whether we're willing to understand or believe that or not, right? But yes, if we don't start to pick apart some of these cultural messages, then we're just going to continue to fall in the same patterns that the generations before us have fallen into, and we're going to continue to stay small. And that is my biggest pet peeve, is women not standing in their power, women not knowing they even have the power. And so, yeah, I think we need to step back a little bit and look at not only how we were raised and the beliefs that came from our families, but really start to dissect culture. And I look at that in terms of like media literacy, right? Like starting to understand what are the messages that are coming to us, whether that's, now it's all different forms, right? It could be social media, and it's not just TV anymore, the commercials that we see, that kind of thing. But these memes, oh my gosh, I share a lot of this on the podcast as well. It's like, to me, it's just continuing to keep women small. It's just reiterating this message that women are bad at money. And I've done a whole episode on this. It's like, why don't we kind of pin ourselves into a certain belief or a certain mindset, and we struggle to get out of that. And it's not until we actually kind of like, I think, slow down and check in with ourselves and check in like, hey, is this belief actually helping me? Do I actually believe this? And start to maybe potentially challenge some of those beliefs, that we actually see what maybe we couldn't see before.
Well, a lot of my clients who come to me for forensic accounting services, or who come to me through the Divorce Money Guide, are women who have not been in charge of the money in the household. And in many respects, that is, a function of still that men are the primary breadwinners in households. And therefore, it has, historically made a lot of sense for them to manage the budget. They have wanted to, et cetera. And what I see is that women are feeling ashamed. Oh my gosh, I didn't keep an eye on the money. And I think that those messages to self, those shameful messages to self, aren't helpful either. I don't think you should be ashamed that you as a family chose for your husband to handle the money. That's A-okay. But now at divorce time, you're in a position where you need to start understanding the money, taking an active role, preparing to manage your money going forward. And so just in the realm of damaging societal messages, the shame surrounding you let your husband manage the money, totally something that I want us to stop doing.
Shame is so powerful in such a negative way. Shame is one of the things that I think keeps women from stepping into their light, from learning the things that and just thriving, right? From doing what is good for them, right? It makes sense. And there's so many reasons why, right? Like first of all, we're not taught personal finance or anything about money, frankly, in schools, and which is like a huge, again, pet peeve of mine. It's so frustrating that just basic information around like credit and debt and just what a balance sheet is and income and liabilities and taxes, like this information that every single person in our country needs to know, right? Yet you have to learn it somehow yourself. We learn stuff that doesn't really matter in the context of life at school, right? Like square dancing. I think about that all the time. That's the example. But we don't learn about the things that actually we need on a daily basis to be an adult, right? And so there's shame in that, but then there's also shame that comes from the fact that many households weren't taught, or many households didn't talk about money. So I know I did. I mean, it was like my dad paid the bills, and that was like one day a month, and he had his time. But then other than that, we didn't talk about it. I didn't know how much they made. I didn't know how much money we had. I just kind of got these messages as I got older that maybe this is what we're in, but we never talked about it. It wasn't a conversation that was out there. And that's a cultural thing. And I'm sure that's the same way in probably 95% of households, right? But now, right, I want to start to shift that, because I realize how damaging it is. As women are, having families of their own and getting to the stage of life where, they're the ones that are responsible for making some of these decisions, we have to be more empowered. We have to be more knowledgeable. And if we feel ashamed that we're, I don't know, stupid or bad at math or don't know what we're doing, then we're just giving away our power. And it's not helping us in any way, because we don't know. As a financial advisor myself, I've worked with widows, I've worked with divorcees, and a lot of them were in those same situations where they were not being where they were not involved with the finances when they were married or in their previous life. And now all of a sudden they've got to learn it. And I'm there to help hold their hand through that. However, it doesn't have to be that way. And there is a lot of shame and there's a lot of emotion in that. And I think we need to work on that ourselves. And that all starts from, again, kind of that slowing down and turning inwards instead of thinking about or focusing on what's external and what's going on around us.
Well, right. It's not just that society is sending us messages about money, but some of the messages come from women themselves, telling themselves they're bad about money, hiding Amazon boxes from their husbands, and then making funny reels about it. I know that
all
one gets you going.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I see it. I mean, I actually did this myself. And it's so funny because in my house, I mean, I'm the breadwinner. My husband, he works. He doesn't pay attention, honestly, to the money. I do. That's my thing. So, but yet I still find myself doing what was modeled for me, right? Which is my mom hiding shoe boxes in her closet. So my dad didn't know how much she was spending on shoes, right? It just seems silly, like downright silly. And I guess that all goes back into a conversation around kind of intentional spending and not feeling ashamed of the things that we're spending our money on. And why are we spending money on things like shoes in the first place, right? Because I think there's a deeper level to dig into there as well, right? Around the why. I myself personally shop as a coping strategy sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of women do that as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
because it's, perceived as healthy versus some of the other maybe non-healthy or unhealthy coping strategies that are out there in our society. So, yeah, I mean, but we have to come to terms with that relationship around spending money and feeling like we have to hide it, because we are empowered, strong women, and we don't need to check in or tell anybody how we spend our money or be told what to do. We are not little girls, right, that have to have a father telling us like what we should and shouldn't do. And this is once I think we understand that dynamic, and that this is a relationship versus kind of a what's the word I want to say, like a being told to do something, or kind of a condescending type of dynamic, then that's when things will start to shift, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. So, what are some of the big areas where women tend to play small with their money?
Well, yeah, I mean, we just said it, right? Like the hiding, the not being forthcoming or self-aware, and I mean with ourselves, right? Not understanding our own behaviors, not understanding deep down our values, what matters to us, and therefore aligning our spending with what matters to us, with that intention and those values. I think the other piece, again, and we just talked about this, is the worthiness component to it, because women who aren't worthy aren't going to advocate for themselves. And so therefore women don't ask for raises. I know it's a terrifying, believe me, I've been in those rooms with bosses before. I've been on those calls where, you're in your review and you're like, well, I think I deserve a little bit more, a higher salary, a raise, or a bigger bonus or something. It's terrifying sometimes, especially if you're having a conversation with a man who's perceived to be, higher than you in your role. But I think if we can come to terms and with our own worth, then we can begin to advocate for ourselves more, and we can begin to feel more empowered in that perspective. I think honestly, self-awareness is massive in all of this. And yeah, I mean, giving away our power comes in so many different forms, right? It comes from not being knowledgeable around what your family's finances, what you have, right? I always say this, like on a basic level, every woman needs to know balance sheet, right? Net worth. So what you own, what you owe, and also cash flow, what's coming in, not just pre-tax, because most people think, oh, I make $100,000, that's my salary, but that's not what is actually coming home in your pocket. There's taxes and there's other deductions that come out of that, and what you're spending, and those components, once you actually have a handle on your spending, is such a relief. Knowledge is so much power. And I think defaulting to let somebody else handle that for you, not looking at prices, not looking at your accounts, not even knowing how to access your accounts, all of those things are ways that women continue to play small.
I think negotiating is one big area where they play small. And when it comes to divorce, this really is an area that can hurt them for many years to come. I always say you have one shot to get the right settlement in your divorce, and this can impact you into your retirement years if you don't get enough of the retirement account or things like that. And so one of the things that we're doing with the Divorce Money Guide is trying to help empower women to stand their ground and say, no, I deserve my share of what we've accumulated during the marriage and things like that.
But that takes work. And as you were saying, before we hit record, I think especially if a woman doesn't work, it's hard to feel worthy of any value there, right? Yet at the same time, you were home, you were taking care of all of the day-to-day management of the house, managing the kids, doing the things that need to be done so that the spouse can go work and earn whatever whoever he or she earns, right, for the household. So this is a team effort. And I think, again, there's a lot of inner work that needs to be done here, whether you work or whether you don't work, around worthiness and how much you deserve. And I think that should be a component to every woman every woman's relationship with money, regardless of where you're at, whether you're going through a divorce, whether you've been through one, whether, you're never going to go through one, it has to be, it's just so essential. And I see it all the time. I actually was just, working with actually a new prospect of ours at work who, same thing, had just gone through a divorce, didn't know anything about the finances going into it. And this is going to be a learning process for her. That's for sure. And she's going to have a lot of patience, and she's going to learn a lot about herself. I know that in this process.
Well, tied very closely to that concept of worthiness is trusting yourself with your money. And I think women have a really hard time trusting themselves with their money. And I know you have some thoughts on that concept.
Yeah. I mean, self-trust is got to be one of the most difficult things for me personally that I've struggled with over the years. I really think that as a kid, and especially as a little girl, you're told, do this, do this, do this, do this, and people will like you, right? And the goal ultimately that I was taught was, I want people to like me, right? So I need to follow all these steps, and I need to do everything that I'm supposed to do or culture tells me to do in order to be liked. Because the goal is not to be happy, the goal is to be liked, right? So what I've done through that experience is I've learned to believe everyone outside of myself and not myself. And so that's why, I think a lot of women, and I say this as my own experience, because I truly believe that what's personal is universal. So I'm saying this about myself and being vulnerable because I know so many other women are experiencing this as well. Like, you are not alone, right? But I think what comes with that is this constant need for validation, to be, questioning our decisions, or difficulty making decisions, right? Which can also lead to anxiety and just confusion around what our goals are and what we want to do and who we are in this world, right? I feel like there's that can come to, like, get to sort of like a midlife crisis place sometimes where, the decisions that need to be made are so much and you become paralyzed that you can't even do something, right? So there's self-trust is one of the most important things I think that we need to learn. And it's not easy to learn. And I will say this too, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, but you can still do that. You can still learn in your 40s and 50s how to trust yourself, even if you struggled with trusting yourself the rest of your life, because we're constantly evolving as humans. We're constantly changing, and we're capable of this. We're capable of living a life that we're proud of and that we're comfortable with, and having that relationship with ourselves that feels trusting and that feels comfortable, that just feels supportive.
What about limiting beliefs like, I can't afford it? How can we as women push back against that type of feeling?
I think, first of all, we need to challenge. We need to actually say, well, let's I like to do this. I like to say, I'm a big kind of journaler, and I like to say, get a piece of paper out, write it out. What does I can't afford it mean to you? Because it's never the thing. It's never about the physical thing. It's always the feeling underneath it. So a lot of times a phrase like I can't afford it could be an excuse, right? It could be you just pushing something away that maybe you're scared of. I really suggest, and I've got kind of journal prompts that I've been thinking about for that, but I suggest starting to dig into that story a little bit more for you, because it's not that you can't afford it. If you really want something, you'll figure out a way to make it happen, right? I think a lot of times I can't afford it is just a limiting belief that we put on ourselves because maybe we don't actually believe in ourselves, right? It depends on what it is. But if it's, I can't afford, the whatever it is, $500 pair of shoes, I'm just making something up, or the fancy car, then maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe you don't actually want it to begin with, right? But so we need to do that kind of inner work there. But if it's, I can't afford it because I'm really just scared of it, we need to begin to challenge it. What I like to say, honestly, and that's just one limiting belief. There's so many so many more out there too, especially around money doesn't grow on trees. And there's so many stories out there that people hear and just attach to in childhood and growing up. I really think any one of those limiting beliefs we need to flip upside down. We need to take a few minutes, do that inner work, and try and challenge it, because guess what? It's never what you think it is. It's
Right.
never about the thing. It's never about the object. And if there is really something, and this is such a personal experience too. It's not going to be the same for everybody else. So I really encourage everybody to start to turn inwards, hop off that treadmill is what I like to say. Because as a working mom, I'm constantly on the go and in this like kind of chaotic, frenzy, hectic life. Really just hop off for a little bit and breathe and say, okay, what's really going on here? What is this? What is this beyond just the story I'm telling myself?
Well, money doesn't grow on trees, but you can always make more. That's the thing.
Yeah,
You can always find a
exactly.
way to make more money. The amount of money you have today does not have to be the amount of money you have tomorrow. You could have more tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially in this day and age, there's so many creative ways to make money. I mean, like, you can sell anything online. Like I say that all the time, because I feel like, again, women pin themselves in a corner. They say, "Oh, okay, well, I can't quit my job, or I can't leave this marriage, or I can't make these big life decisions because I'm telling myself a story that I'm not going to be okay, or that I can't make this money, or I'm not, whatever it is, right?" And so I want to help women understand that there's always a way. There's always a way.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have to get creative. You may have to invest in some help or a coach or something like that, but there's always a way. And there's honestly, if it isn't working for you right now, there's another side to this, and there's ways to help you get there. So, yeah, I think there's reality, right? And there's like fact. And the fact is, yes, money doesn't grow on a tree, but there's ways, just like you said, there's always ways to increase it. And, you have to be willing and open in order to see those possibilities.
So, as we're wrapping up, I know you have 5 things that you think every woman should know about her money. What are
Yeah.
those?
Okay. So the first thing is first of all, and a lot of them we covered, to be honest.
Cool.
Or we touched on here and there. But the first one is I believe that all spending is emotional, right? So I think that again, women get this bad rap for being the emotional ones, right? And that's the reason why women weren't allowed to have bank accounts in their own name until 1974, because it was assumed that women were too emotional and therefore not rational when it comes to managing money, right? Again, twisting that upside down, turning it on its head, because I believe that all spending is emotional. Everything you spend your money on gives you some kind of reaction one way or the other, right? And so let's embrace that. As women, let's embrace our emotions. Like, it doesn't mean, it's not a bad thing to be emotional, right? So there's that. The other thing is, again, it kind of goes back to that shame conversation, is know that we're not taught to like money. We're not taught about money. We're not told like that it's okay to have money, right? So understand that and embrace the world that we're in right now, and know that the culture and the environment that we're in and the society that we're in isn't going to help us on this journey. It's actually going to be holding us back. So we just have to know that that's the world that we're in right now. The other things that I would say are around more tactical things, like I just said, knowing what you have, knowing that balance sheet that I talked about, your assets and your liabilities. What do you have? What are the outstanding balances? What are the interest rates on them? Where are your accounts, right? Mapping all that out is so incredibly powerful. Same on the expense side, knowing what's coming in pre and post tax, and what on a monthly basis, and what you're spending your money on. There's so many tools out there like that you can link your accounts to. It makes it so much easier now that you can do this all online. You can aggregate all of your accounts, your debit cards and your credit cards and all those accounts, and it'll give you like a monthly spending number. And that in and of itself is so incredibly empowering. I think so many women forget to do, or not just forget, but maybe purposely avoid to do something like that, right? So that's power in and of itself. The fifth thing I would say is knowing where your accounts are and knowing how to access them. A lot of times, you might as a family have like maybe a spreadsheet or a book somewhere with all of the accounts and all the passwords. You need to at the very minimum know where those passwords are, know how to access those, and know who, if you work with advisors, know who they are, start to develop a relationship with them. All of that is so key. And the last piece I will say to all of this is we need to have massive amounts of self-compassion, because as women, we tend to be super hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up. And again, we tell ourselves that we're stupid. We tell ourselves all these terrible things that aren't helping us in any way. So if we learn to approach this with massive amounts of self-compassion, saying, okay, and I actually had on my show, I had Dr. Kristen Neff, who's the pioneer in self-compassion research. It was an amazing conversation. And Dr. Neff said that in her research, there's 3 components of self-compassion. There's kindness, there's mindfulness, and there's common humanity. And for me, the biggest piece of that is common humanity, knowing that you are not alone, that you're not the only one that might be struggling or going through what you're going through right now. And that's my message. That's what I want to tell women, that you are not alone. We're all in this together, and you don't have to deal with this together. We can support each other. So that's how I would like to kind of wrap this up. I think it's just so important for women to know that they can be kind to themselves. Treat yourself like you would a friend, or as I say for moms, as your kid. You would never tell your kid they're stupid if they're just learning something for the first time, or if they're struggling because, they just can't grasp something. You would never do that. So show that same kind of compassion to yourself.
I love it. Meghan Dwyer, tell us again where to find you.
Yeah, so you can listen to the podcast Money Isn't Scary anywhere you get your podcasts. You can check out my website, moneyisantscary.com, and I'm also active on social media on Facebook and Instagram, just at Money Isn't Scary.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. Awesome episode. Can't wait to talk to you again some other time.
Thank you for having me. This was great.